You're watching the PoliticIt Podcast.
Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt Podcast. I'm Senator John Johnson, and we have Howard Headlee with us today. Howard's the president of the Utah Bankers Association.
It's great to be with you. Thanks, John, for having me on.
Yeah, it's nice to talk to you, Howard. We were talking a little bit before the podcast about this whole idea of banking, right? And it's kind of fascinating stories, right?
Well, it's really at the center of everything I'm passionate about, and so I found a home there. I've been at the Utah Bankers Association for almost 30 years now.
Almost 30 years. Now, did you kind of start that group, or
no,
you just came in?
No, they've been around since 1913.
1913.
I'm the fifth, executive director or president of the association, so people tend to stay there a while, and I can see why. Again, it's just a vital industry to the American dream, to the whole, our free markets and what everybody's pursuing. We play a central role in that, and so I get very passionate about the role the banks play and making sure people understand it. Part of it is just helping people understand how banks really work. There's so many different perspectives and so much misinformation out there.
I want to get into the details of that, but at first I want to kind of go back to, where'd you grow up, Howard? How did you get into this? What's your background that really led you to where you are today?
Well, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and my father was CEO of a life insurance company back there, but he was very involved in politics, and he was very passionate about free markets and conservative principles, and he ran for governor. He led a signature initiative petition drive. It's the first time in the history of the state that the Constitution of the state of Michigan was amended through the signature petition process.
Oh, wow.
And it was a proposal that was actually drafted by Milton Friedman to limit the size of state government and all government. And it was kind of the comprehensive tax limitation proposal. It's brilliant, and it's still in place, and it's widely regarded as the most effective of all those 1978 tax limitation proposals.
And so what did that do?
It limited the size of government, and it prevented the state government from pushing programs down to local governments' unfunded mandates. It's a comprehensive plan to limit taxes by limiting government spending. And anytime the state of Michigan, even today, collects more money than the limit allows, everybody gets a Headlee refund.
Oh, wow.
And if they ever want to collect more money...
Do they call it the Headlee refund?
Yeah, they do. Everybody says, why aren't you in Michigan running for something? Because I love Utah, and it's been great.
So what happened with that race with your dad?
Well, we lost. It was in the Reagan off year, which is a fascinating time. It's a lot like we were just where we are in, right? It was high inflation, high unemployment. At that point in time, Reagan was in the White House, and it was in Paul Volcker. They were trying to get their arms around inflation once and for all. We had been dealing with for over a decade. You think back to the Nixon and then the transition of the Ford administration, and my dad was actually asked to serve on a White House task force to get inflation under control in 1973.
Wow.
So now we're in 1982, and he's running for election in this Reagan off year after Reagan and Volcker tried to get their grips on inflation and end it once and for all, and it was very painful. I'm sure you remember that time.
Yeah.
And it was a bloodbath year, 82, for Republicans, especially in the Midwest. Most Republicans statewide in the Midwest in the 82 were lost by double digits.
So was your dad then, he was the Republican nominee?
He was the Republican nominee for governor, and we lost by I think 3 percentage points.
Wow.
And
I bet that was disappointing.
It was disappointing because I think, it's all controversial to say, but I think we actually won that election. Coleman Young was the mayor of Detroit. There was all kinds of corruption. All the security cameras went down the night of the election where we had all the security set up where they counted the ballots in Cobo Hall, and the mayor actually owned the trucking company that transported the ballots, and he was indicted in a number of areas.
Interesting.
Bottom line is that Coleman Young was not the most reputable guy, but it was the greatest thing for our family. My dad made most of his money and his success after he lost that, and great for me because I left the state of Michigan and moved to Utah, went to BYU.
So that's when you left for school.
Yeah, I was very active in the campaign. So I was 18 years old. I was a senior in high school, and my dad's opponent would not debate him. He was a congressman, and so just to kind of rub that in, his opponent would always send a state senator or a congressman or a lieutenant governor candidate, and so my dad would send me, this 18-year-old kid, and so I debated.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So I was really heavy into the campaign for governor, and when we lost narrowly, it was very disappointing. And I didn't want to go. I was always going to probably go to University of Michigan, right? I was blue, and at that point, I just decided I needed to get away. Just had to get away from it all.
Right.
And
you probably would have gone there had he won. There.
Oh, probably, yeah. But it was very polarized back then. Our house was evacuated for bomb threats. I mean, we had state troopers that lived with us and drove us everywhere.
Wow. During the election.
During the election, and so it was just time to get away. It gave me a really raw view of politics, especially Michigan style.
Right.
And I just didn't want to walk everywhere I went. Either people loved you or hated you. It was very polarized. And so I came out to BYU and got an accounting degree.
At BYU?
At BYU, and just fell in love with it out here. It's
so
beautiful.
That's what took you into the tax area then? The
Well,
accounting degree or not?
No. I was interested in tax because of what my dad did with limitation. So I was the guy that drove around the state with him, and I was the tech guy. So back in the days, that tech was one of those carousel slide things.
Oh yeah.
But ours was really, really modern. It's connected to a tape recorder.
Oh.
So you could hit the tape, and the tape recorder would advance the slides, and I would set up the projector.
So it's almost like you had a video of all things, right?
And it was great. And we literally I traveled with my dad at 14 years old and traveled around the state and
So that started when you were 14?
14, and literally every night we were driving somewhere and making a presentation to a Rotary Club here, a Kiwanis Club there, or some community group, and I listened to my dad over and over
saying the same thing.
Say things that Milton Friedman had written.
Right.
And it was just an amazing education, and that's where I really dove into tax policy and economics, and that was my interest. I majored in accounting at BYU because it was my worst subject.
Really?
And I figured if I was going to be involved in business of any type, I needed to really understand it. And BYU is like the #1 accounting school in the country, and I figured if you're paying the money,
you might as well
get the best
right,
degree. So I did work in accounting for a couple of years, but I ended up finding my way back into this kind of I went to work for the Utah Taxpayers Association.
Oh, that's your tie to there.
Yeah, Howard Stevenson hired me basically because he knew who my dad was, and he's like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
So I kind of had a leg up to get into that role, but I loved it. I loved working at the Taxpayers Association, working for Howard, and because he became elected in the Senate.
So that was after his stint there at the Taxpayers Association, or was that?
No. About 6 months into my job working there, he ran for Senate and was elected. So that thrust me into the
middle of
during the legislative session. I had to run the association, and be the voice. So it was a great opportunity for me. And then about 6 years after that, the Bankers Association, the president retired and was looking for a replacement, and they hired me. I'm still kind of stunned that they did. I was really young. I mean, it's 30 years ago.
Wow.
But I learned so much. I mean, here I had an accounting degree and an MBA, and I still didn't know anything about banking. I really didn't know anything about banking and how it worked. And that's why, I really feel it's important to help people understand how banks work. There's so many misunderstandings about what a bank does.
Well, let's talk about that. We're going to take a break and we'll come back.
Tired of media bias? Frustrated by political noise? PoliticIt.com cuts through the clutter, giving you real facts, clear analysis, and unbiased insight on the issues that matter most. Stay informed, stay empowered. Whether it's elections, policy changes, or breaking news, we've got you covered. No spin, no agendas, just truth you can trust. Visit PoliticIt.com today, because informed citizens shape the future. PoliticIt.com, where politics meets clarity.
Welcome back to PoliticIt. We've got Howard Headlee with us. And Howard, before the break, we started talking, about your work and how you got to the Utah Bankers Association. But one of the things you mentioned that I thought was really interesting is this tax policy that your father developed that came from Milton Friedman. Yeah. I'd like to talk just a little bit about that, because Milton Friedman's kind of one of my heroes, and why I went into economics, actually. So
yeah, I think he was the person I was most excited to meet. I've met a ton of people in my life, but he's just legend in my mind. And I remember meeting him on a couple different occasions, and I was just so excited.
Yeah. So that tax policy then, that actually came. He was the guy that kind of come up with a lot of the ideas.
In 1978, there was a big tax revolt all across the country, and different states took different approaches. In California, it was all about Prop 13, and people were mostly upset about property taxes. That's right. That's the most painful tax, because it's not related to your ability to pay.
Right.
And but
yeah, and it seems kind of weird that you work your life paying off your house and then you have to rent it from the government.
Yeah, pretty much. And then it gets worse and worse as it appreciates.
Right.
Right. So I think Milton Friedman and Paul McCracken, University of Chicago, were watching this, saying, well, everybody's getting it wrong. If you were to do this, this is how you would do it. And they kind of drafted a model bill, right? Uh-huh. And approached my dad and said, this is what Michigan should do. Would you consider leading the charge and getting it?
And at that time, he was the CEO of insurance companies.
He was the CEO of Alexander Hamilton Life Insurance Company, and he had run George Romney's presidential campaign in '68.
Oh, he did.
So he knew what he was doing. He's very dynamic.
So did you know the Romney family then?
Yeah, I grew up with the Romneys. Yeah,
that's cool.
They were very close, and George presented me with my Eagle Scout Award.
Oh, he did.
It's a great memory. George is an amazing guy. Should have been president, to be honest. I mean, and the country would have been totally different. Totally different, right? But that, there's so many things we could talk about.
Well, that's kind of interesting, though, that your dad actually ran that campaign. I didn't know that.
And there's some stories there we could talk about of the other campaigns coming to try to recruit my dad away and offer him all kinds of things. You get an idea of kind of how that.
So
works.
Did your dad then kind of back away from the insurance business and just kind of switch to doing this stuff, or was he just doing all this on the side?
This was all on the side. No, so he would run the insurance company, and then at night we'd drive around the state and he'd speak. And he was the greatest public speaker I've ever heard. I mean, it's just the way it is.
That was kind of cool, being able to grow up in that environment, right? Because you said you were 14 when you started that.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time with my dad, and I treasure those moments. It was very inspirational and obviously influenced the way I thought. But this program was the first time the Constitution of the state of Michigan was amended by ballot, by signature petition.
Yeah.
And it's still in the Constitution today, and it's widely recognized as what has turned Michigan around and facilitated its emergence and economic growth, and it's limited the state government and taxes and fostered a better economic environment. So it's something we're still very proud of, the Headlee Amendment.
Right, that's cool.
And I've heard people say we need a Headlee Amendment at a national level, and it's absolutely true. We need a national Headlee Amendment.
Well, maybe you could.
They called it the Headlee Amendment because he was the one, out talking about it. But it was written by
it should have
a
been
legend.
Friedman.
It should have been the Milton. And maybe if we had called it that, we would have one at the national level.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story. So fast forward, you go to BYU, and then after BYU, you go to work
at KPMG.
Okay.
in public accounting, and I audited banks, and so I knew a lot about banking,
From that.
audit perspective, but I went back to University of Utah, got a master's degree, and that's
So what's your master's degree in?
just finance,
Oh, okay.
and just finance, but
Yeah.
finance, and went to work for the Taxpayers Association.
After that, after your master's.
Right, and then 5 years later went to the Bankers Association.
So how long's the Taxpayers Association been there? Because does that predate
It was
the?
1922. No,
really?
the Bankers Association is just a little bit older than. I could be wrong. I'm guessing. I think that's what I remember seeing on the 1923, maybe on their logo. I think they have it on their logo.
Yeah.
So
So you were working with Howard Stevenson there,
yep,
and then he ran for Senate,
yeah.
and you had to kind of run
It
things.
thrust me into some important conversations, because this is the early 90s, and we were a high tax state.
Right.
This is when the state kind of transitioned, and we laid the groundwork for this amazing economic performance that we're in today. But it wasn't a great situation back in the.
So how did you get
90s.
now to the Bankers Association?
The president of the Bankers Association retired in '97, and they asked me to interview, and they hired me to replace him there.
So have you seen a big change in the banking industry in Utah?
Yeah, I mean, most people are unaware. Utah is the 5th largest banking state in the country. We just surpassed $1 trillion in assets
In Utah.
in Utah headquartered banks.
Wow.
So we're bigger than a lot of states. We're bigger than California. We're bigger than Texas.
So somebody told me that we're one of the biggest states in terms of industrial banking.
Yeah. Well, industrial banks are a real important part of that landscape, but we have the most diverse banking ecosystem. So we have the traditional banks, the community banks, the regional banks, the national money center banks. We have these industrial banks. Utah is just the best place in America to operate a bank. And that's been my goal over the last 30 years, is to make sure we have the best banking laws. And now we've got people buying banks. Lending Club bought a bank in Boston and moved it to Utah.
Really?
Yeah, SoFi bought a bank in California, moved it to Utah. SunWest Bank, which was a California bank, just moved their bank to Utah.
So what banks are those now?
Lending Club.
Okay.
So Lending Club wanted a bank. They bought a bank, I can't remember the name of it, in Boston, and moved it here.
And then and that was the lending.
So Lending Club Bank is headquartered here in Lehigh.
And these have national banking charters. Is that how it works?
Yeah, these are, those are, I think it's probably a nationally chartered bank headquartered in Utah. We have the industrial banks that are headquartered in Utah, but they serve a national market. They're headquartered here. SoFi was an industrial bank, then it became a commercial bank, but it's still, Ally Bank. It became a commercial bank headquartered in Sandy, but it's all over the country.
Wow.
I mean,
So
lending and
so what's the difference there with in the way those, when you talk about industrial bank, what does that mean? This different.
an industrial bank it's a unique charter. It's a limited charter, but it has an exemption from the National Bank Holding Company Act, a narrow exemption that allows a commercial firm like BMW
Right.
owns a bank in Utah.
Oh.
Their bank is headquartered in Utah. So
I didn't even know that.
yeah, so BMW isn't allowed to own a commercial bank, but they can own an industrial bank.
And this is how they do financing and stuff within
Yep.
it.
This is how they do finance. Toyota has an industrial bank. Theirs is headquartered in Nevada. And right now, Ford, General Motors, Stellantis, Nissan are all applying to have a bank in Utah
Wow.
right now.
So So that transition from where you started with this to now, what's the difference in the landscape for the banking?
Utah is in the middle of pretty much every, innovation. One of the other really important things that's happened in the Utah banking landscape has been this partnering, where fintechs that have a product to offer will partner with a bank and offer their product, nationwide through a Utah bank.
So like the Apple Card.
Yeah. I think
That's
Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, that's Goldman Sachs, and I noticed that the address is actually in Salt Lake. So
yeah. So most of the innovative things that are happening in the banking financial services space is happening in Utah. It's
why is that?
Again, we have the best laws, and we have the most predictable and stable legislative process. So, credit to you and the legislature that we're not lurching back and forth from, Marxism to free markets to that this national landscape is crazy, and it's hard to run a business, especially a bank. Because, of course, under the far left kind of Marxist theories, banks don't exist.
Right.
You don't have banks. And again, that's why I'm passionate about it. The banking system plays a central role in the American dream, in the whole concept. And the founders, were passionate about it. I mean, what they did that was unique in the history of the world, and I know we've talked about this, is they established the pursuit of happiness as an unalienable right, as fundamental as the right to life and liberty.
Right.
It's the first time that ever happened, right?
Right.
That's pretty fundamental. And the fact of the matter is that pursuit of happiness, and I know people describe it differently, but that's the beauty of it. It's whatever it means to you, it's whatever it means to me, but it doesn't happen in America today without a vibrant banking system that everyone has access to. It's hard to start a business, it's hard to buy a house, it's hard to pay for an education. You got to be able to save money. You have to be able to have secure access to your money. I mean, so I view what we do in the banking system is central to everything. All the unalienable rights that we hold dear, and so I passionately defend that.
And that's primarily your role as the head of the Bankers Association.
Yes.
Is that you're the liaison to the legislative process in some ways, right?
Right.
Not only in Utah, but nationally.
And
right?
nationally, with both elected officials, legislators, congressmen, but the regulatory agencies as they try to implement those laws. There's just issues, problems that can occur anywhere down that road. The
Right.
administrative rules process
Right.
here in the state, and sometimes you pass a law and the rule gets drafted, and you're looking at it going,
What happened here?
What happened? This is not what the law meant. So somebody's got to be watching that all the way through the process.
That's
what I do. And again, that's the goal in having Utah be.
So how does that get funded? Is that the member banks all?
Yeah.
So it's an association. Do most of the banks belong to that association?
Yeah, all the banks. And there's a couple that don't. Some of the smaller ones aren't members of the Utah Bankers Association, but most all the banks are members, and we have a very vibrant group, a board of directors, and we have meetings, and it is their association. This is not Howard's association. This is the Utah Bankers Association.
Right.
And I just facilitate that for them and try to, do what they tell me to do.
Right. Well, the great thing is that you've established massive relationships with. I mean, you're up on the hill all the time, right?
Yeah.
But you just know all the players in the.
Yeah. Well, that's the easy
process.
part. That's the best part of my
Right.
job. I meet people like you, and I know everybody. And the good thing about Utah is that most of them, Democrats and Republicans, they agree. Banking serves everybody.
Yeah.
Whether you're a Republican or Democrat,
I notice when your bills are going through, they're usually favored by both parties, and they're usually pretty easy to vote on.
Yeah, we have a lot of support because people understand that our industry is central to the dreams of their constituents. And when their constituents succeed, we succeed. Despite what you hear a lot, banks can succeed if the communities they serve are struggling.
Right.
It's not like we're, riding high and everybody's, suffering.
Right.
If our community's suffering, we're suffering. And that's why you see bankers here like Scott Anderson and prominent banker Harris Simmons, I think, has led the homeless charge for decades.
Right.
Right? When a banker sees a problem in the community, they realize it's just a matter of time before that problem is going to find its way to the performance of the bank. And the bank's fortunes are tied to the community's fortunes. We can't separate. We just simply are the community. And so when the community succeeds, the bank succeeds. When they struggle, we struggle. Our fortunes are tied, and I think legislators get that. So when we come to you and say, we got to change this isn't working.
Right.
Yeah, we have a lot of support, and it's a great, I love my job.
Yeah, very good. We're out of time. Okay. In parting, what would you say? I mean, yeah, you got any final thoughts? I guess is what
I've got a lot of thoughts, final thoughts. In terms of banking, I just think it's central, and still I don't think people understand, when they talk about economic growth and the creation of money. I mean, people need to understand how that actually works. And banking, they view it as very boring because they view it as like, well, this is how I access my money. I put my money in there and it's there when I need it. But what's happening behind the scenes is really unbelievable, because we're putting that money to work while you're not using it. And that basically doubles that money.
Right.
Right? And then when it's paid back
So
successfully,
that's the multiplier effect.
that's how the economy actually grows. It happens at that bank level. And so we have to defend and protect and promote the creation of thousands of banks. That's what makes America different than the rest of the world. We have thousands of banks, independently allocating capital in communities throughout the country. So it kind of democratizes the access to credit. And there's all these forces in the world that's leading to the consolidation of that. And if we allow that to succeed, we're going to end up with a handful of really big banks, like the rest of the world has.
Right.
And that is antithetical to the whole American.
Well, and that's cool about the Utah system, is that we do have a wide variety of different banks, right?
But it's still hard for the small banks to survive, and we haven't had a new small bank in almost 20 years.
Oh, wow.
John. That's a problem. I mean, to me, that's probably the most grave statistic that we should be looking at. We just haven't had any new bank. Capital is not flowing into the banking system. In a capitalist economy, the most important scoreboard is the flow of capital.
Right.
And if capital isn't flowing into your industry, there's a problem. And I guess that's part of my warning cry, is that we need thousands of banks across the country allocating credit fairly, dispassionately, not politically.
Right.
That's ESG. That's been a horrible, horrible era that we've had. And you only achieve that if you have a lot of banks doing it. You can't, force them all to do one political thing.
Right.
But
that's the beauty of having that diversity in the banking system.
But through ridiculous regulations on small banks, forces them to consolidate, and then they just won't charter new ones, right? So capital isn't flowing in, and so we're seeing fewer and fewer, bigger and bigger banks, and it's the wrong direction. So it's kind of my current passion. So if I have a final word, it's that. If we want our economy to keep growing and growing fairly, democratically, we have to fix this flow of capital into the banking space. We have to be replenishing and building the number of banks, not consolidating them.
Right. Well, thanks for coming in.
Well,
nice
thanks for having
talking
me.
to you. Howard Headlee. We'll see you guys next week.